Hey, Small Towns Unscripted. How you doing, Richard Uhlhorn?
I'm doing well, actually. I'm actually doing better than I should be doing.
Well, I don't know if you've watched any of these crazy episodes, but this is Tara Chelan. I think
I've
you guys known each other a bit.
For years and years and years. Matter of fact, when their house burnt down, she lost all her sports photos and said, "You have them?" You remember that?
Can I have some, please?
Yeah, and I got them for her, because I don't throw anything away.
And your business, that's probably a really important fact. We should talk about that. And this is Nicole Turner.
Yeah, I met Nicole.
And then that's Desiree. She might crash the party. She might not. She's coming back from Idaho. So anyway, I know you guys are close too. So, and my name's Russ McClellan.
Yep.
Nice to meet you again for the 700th time.
Right. By the way, I talked to my son yesterday,
Yeah.
Scotty, and he said, "Say hi to Russ for me."
Yeah. He sent me some texts, and he was talking about, gosh, what was it? Another episode we're hoping to get Steve Sturtz on. So your son kind of jumped on some other people and said that he was very inspirational. Yeah. And then he showed me a picture of his band, and he's playing music. And
they played some amazing music, honest to God. And he wrote a complete movie screenplay for music down in there. So he's doing well.
Well, I love this podcast, and I love it when we got young men like yourself. What are you going on about? 53 for the 30th time?
Yeah, about that.
Something like that? Okay.
I'll be 83 April 12th.
83 April 12th. You look fantastic, first of all. I want some of what you're taking.
Yeah.
Or I should stop doing whatever I'm doing that you're not doing.
I mean, Rich is active.
So Tara's saying that you need to be more active. That's what Tara's saying.
Well, I've lost a lot of weight, too.
You look great.
I dropped from about 200 to 182 this morning. And it's all because I had pushing away carbohydrates, staying away from the breads and stuff.
Oh, you and Carol should get along then.
Yeah.
She's doing that to the whole world.
My back stopped hurting, my hips stopped hurting. I mean.
Well, let's for people that don't know, I mean, this might be their first episode, but it's I think we're going on 13 or 14 or something like that. But it's been a lot of fun, and this is all about trying to get to know people at a deeper level than just of them, and then unite a community too, because there's so many different versions of this town and different memories, and whether
different
you're here
versions of ourselves.
For sure, yeah. We often say, or at least I often say, that you might know me from high school, you might know me from an industry. I didn't sell your house, so I'm a bad guy, or maybe you moved here 5 days ago and you're trying to assimilate. Well, everybody's important. That's what this is all about, right? And what I have here is something that you sent me, and this is a great example because I've known you since the 80s, I think.
Yeah, 88 is when I came back after 29 years being gone. Yeah, I mean,
how much of this did you know about Rich?
Like 5%.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I feel like what we know
this is a great example.
Is Rich the journalist, Rich that's capturing everything, Rich who's at every event, every sporting thing, all the things. Like that's
the guy with the camera, right?
Right. This is the Rich, and I know that you mountain bike.
Yeah.
Things like that. But like this list,
it's
this
amazing.
is awesome.
So what did you do for the 29 years? You said you were not here for 29 years, right?
Yeah, I left when I graduated from high school. I left with a wife and a baby. Yeah, Scott was born in 1960 when I graduated. It's one of those things, the shotgun wedding.
I had one of those.
Yeah. We've all been through our marriages and divorces, right? So, but I left and I went to Western Washington University Western Washington College of Education back then for a year, and then I went to Seattle and began work as a fisheries technician at the Bureau of Commercial Fisheries.
Oh, wow.
And they immediately, we were doing X-ray, we were X-raying salmon at that time and trying to figure out why they migrated back to the exact same spot that they had hatched.
Why?
It was a migratory study.
Why did they?
Yeah, they sent myself and 3 other guys to Alaska 2 years in a row.
Wow.
To collect salmon samples on all the river systems in the bay. And the second year was to collect blood samples because they'd gotten rid of the X-ray stuff. But at any rate, it was an interesting 2 summers in Alaska at all the river systems.
Like Copper River?
No, Copper River's in BC.
Oh.
No, these were
That's
the Queejack, Lake Iliamna. I could name Igagik, Ugashik, you name it.
That's cool.
Well,
even Wood River, where Disney did all his Bear Country movies.
Oh, yeah?
and we got to go there and collect salmon, and we had about 50 Kodiak brownies on the river with us at the time that we were there.
Oh, gosh.
Really?
And it was interesting because one of them decided that our little gill net was a perfect refrigerator for him, and
I was going to say, at least they're full.
he would come to our gill net
Thanks, Rich.
on the other side, and it's only 65 feet from us, grab a salmon and go off, and we'd move up the river trying to get rid of him, and he'd know right where to go, and he'd come back up and do it again.
They're no dummies.
It was fun.
So let me go back in time a little bit, because your dad's fascinating to me. So let me this is some of the stuff you wrote me. Your dad was born, were you born? Your dad?
My dad was born in 1898.
1898, and you were born in 1942 in Lewiston. But your dad was originally moved here and worked for Jim Armbruster in 1956. Is that correct, or you?
No, my dad retired as the forest ranger. He was a district ranger when I was growing up in Montana.
Okay.
He retired after 35 years, and Jim and he had worked in the Forest Service together.
Okay.
At one point, before Jim became an orchardist here.
Right.
And when a management position came open at the Lake Chelan Reclamation District, he called Dad and said, "You got to apply for this."
So this is when the Reclamation District was being formed.
Wood flumes, all wood flumes, yeah.
Was being formed from Goat Mountain, which is across from 25 Mile Creek. Yeah. That's where the head of the waters that irrigated this entire valley started. Yeah.
Wow. So when Dad got here in 1956, I was still in my freshman year of high school, so Mom and I stayed in Lewistown. But when he got here, the first thing that he asked was, "Have you ever measured snow?" Because that's one of the things he did in the Forest Service. So he started that year measuring snow, and he measured snow for all the years that he was here. And when it came time for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to put the pumps in down here for water, they used my dad's records and said, "We need 66 cubic feet per second."
Per second.
So and the PUD said, "You're not getting that." So they pulled all my dad's records, and they got it.
Yeah.
He was a meticulous guy,
yeah. Years and years and years.
So there's a story that my dad told me that went back to that moment prior to the submersible pump being invented, prior to the reclamation. And that is the wealthy people bought in the mountains that were orchardists, and as far as the water level, it would often dry up by the time it got to the lake. So there were the people with less money bought farmland on the lake, because of the elevation drop.
Yeah.
Because you were doing the flume, and then you were doing ditch irrigation where you had to pull a plug out of the flume, right? And then it would go down a main line, and then you'd have, it was all wooden plugs.
Yeah. All wooden flume, all wooden,
ditch irrigated, essentially.
Yeah.
And so then if like John used too much water, then Jack used too much water, and by the time it gets to old Nick down here at the lake, he's out of water, he's pissed.
Yeah.
So that's the broke people.
Yeah.
And then there was this thing called the pump that was invented, and they were like, "What's up? I own Lakefront."
Yeah.
and I own
and Antelope Lake was the reservoir for the irrigation system.
So it went from Goat Mountain, wooden flume, to Antelope Lake.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it went on into more wooden flumes.
It went down my property.
Yeah.
I have a flume road on my property.
Wow,
yeah. Is the flume still there?
No.
I've fallen in. I've stepped in it. I've hunted.
Fires.
Most of it burnt in '68, I think.
Well, I've stepped in it personally hunting more than once.
Ooh.
Above Antelope Lake towards Camp 4, on the way up towards Goat Mountain.
Still some remnants, but not much.
Yeah, it's just they're kind of buried with erosion. But every once in a while you're hunting and you think you're on solid ground and you go through.
I wrote a history of that whole thing for the Reclamation District in the Mirror. But so that's and then we came in '57 after I got out of my freshman year. And my first memory of Lake Chelan, I was not happy. I was only 15 years old, and I was leaving all my buddies, my hunting buddies and everything in Montana, and fishing buddies. And my first impression of Lake Chelan, believe it or not, was unlimited hydroplanes. As we came up the hill towards Manson, they were on the lake, 1957 Apple Cup, and they were going around and around and around, and I was, whoa, that's kind of interesting. And subsequently to that, I got to know Norm Evans really well. He and I actually became pretty good acquaintances.
Did you see Mark's episode?
Yeah, I kind of watched Mark's stuff. Yeah, yeah.
He's
like, I already know that clown.
Yeah.
Norm was a character. Yeah.
I think y'all were characters. That's my theory. Yeah. All you guys that are 80 to 90, and then the remnants were characters.
So I completed my high school years here.
So you're a Manson Trojan.
I was forced to play football. You know how that went. New kid comes to town. Yeah, the kids weren't going to let me not play. I didn't want to play football. I didn't play football. And what do I want to play football for? I wasn't an athlete. So they forced me. I can't afford it. Well, we'll pay for it. We'll do this, So they got me. Yeah, I played football all 3 years.
I tell people it might not be politically correct, but since when I've been that.
I played with Dennis King. Oh, you probably know. They were already playing.
I talked to Dennis
They were already
King.
Playing when you graduated, weren't they?
Yeah. I talked to Dennis King, though. He's the guy that does the Manson Historical.
Yeah, does a great job.
He moved to...
He's over in Colville.
I asked him to come on the podcast. He's like,
no, you got to get him because he's got a lot of history.
I've tried. You're going to have to give me some...
I'll get a hold of him.
Yeah, you get
it. I'll tell him that.
Say, if I did it, you can do it.
Well, I say small towns are great because Tommy Tubby is 5'0" and weighs about 400 pounds. He has to play basketball, even if it likes video games, because we need you to block out with your butt. Because we don't have enough people. So you're playing on the basketball team, Tommy. That's the good news, bad news, right?
Yeah.
Like even if you,
I mean, it's true. I'm trying to recruit boys to play tennis because the numbers this year are low. It's like, just come on. Oh, the girls are stacked. Yeah.
Well, Manson had some good players. They had Willard and
yes.
number. Is Willard? He's not in high school still.
Don't quiz me on kids' names, please. Put
She's
me on the
talking
hot
8-year-old.
seat.
Willard, Paul and his wife, Catherine. Kevin.
Yes.
Is he still playing?
Yes, he's a little.
Well, he should be able to grab some
He's a
people.
little
He's
injured
good
right now, but he's getting back to it.
Yeah, I covered him last year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's good.
So let me keep going on this
All
because
right.
your life is something else, man.
I know.
I'm
I
serious,
love all this.
Serious. So you went to work in the orchards. You graduated from Manson High School in 1960.
Yeah.
Correct. And then you went to work for Ed Armbruster, who...
Yeah, Jim's son. Yeah, he had a large orchard up on Summit.
And so would you pick and prune and thin apples and summertime?
Yep. And then we'd go to work at like 4 a.m. and get off about 1 because it was so hot. People talk about how hot it is now. It was hot back then. And we'd come down to the old swimming hole and play ragtag and chase the girls and do our thing.
You didn't chase girls in the 60s, did you? What?
So anyway, Ed was
shotgun wedding, right?
Yeah. Ed was also the district ranger at the time, and a lot of us high school kids would get called up when a wildfire started. So there's an interesting story about that because Leo England was our fire chief, our fire boss on wildfire. And in I think 1960, we were on a fire above Wenatchee in the forest, and A.J. Platt dumped us with his helicopter. Took 2 of us at a time, and he'd hover about 10 feet above the ground, and we'd jump out with our piss cans and our Pulaskis. And anyway, we were fighting this fire, and Leo got heat stroke. And so we called Platt in to pick him up, and he came in and landed right on the hillside above Wenatchee, and picked Leo up. But the Forest Service guy that was on the helicopter should have got off. He didn't. So when Leo got on, who was not a small guy, it overweighted that helicopter. So the helicopter was fine as it took off in the heat wave of the fire. And the moment it got out of that, boom, 200 feet to the ground, and they all went through the bubble. None of them died. The only thing that was left of the helicopter was the engine.
That's crazy.
What?
And Leo never was able to work in the orchard again. He stayed alive for many years and was a very active person, but he never was able to go out in the orchard. So it was up to Dale and Doug and those guys to do the orchard work.
Yeah.
Interesting that then Dale became a helicopter pilot.
Yeah. I've flown with Dale.
Me too. No trauma from that, I guess.
Dale was a great pilot.
Oh yeah. So fun in that.
So he became a pilot after that accident?
Not Leo.
Oh.
His son.
So
Got it.
so in the end of that thing is that Lane Roos and I and our other firefighter friends got called into the ranger district down here, and the FBI interviewed us about the whole thing and why it happened.
Oops.
And we watched it happen. It was scary. I mean, I thought they were all dead.
Well, it's amazing the pilots and how courageous they are and how skilled they have to be in those fires. When you get a big fire, especially if it's threatening people,
I'm amazed at what they do today.
Those DC-10s or whatever came over the school and dropped the retardant. Whenever what was that fire? Like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That burned right down.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, wildfire's kind of been a part of my life.
Yeah, you're definitely a lazy guy. I can see that by all the stuff. You have an ambition problem. So then you go to Alaska, and you talked about this briefly. I don't know if you heard what Tara was saying. What did you discover in the 2 years? Did you actually figure out why salmon went back?
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever figured it out.
Ever figured it out.
They still
the homing beacon.
I mean, it's science. It's science. You try and try and try.
Some things can't we just let them be nature?
What's that?
Can't we just let it be nature?
Yeah, let it be nature. I agree, Tara. And it was fascinating. I mean, at Lake Iliamna and the Kvichak River, we'd collect the salmon there near sockeye, just like from the Copper River, but they're sockeye, right? And they're coming up. There were so many sockeye coming up the Kvichak River, you could have walked across the river on their backs. Yeah. They'd have two state guys in this tower with two counters in each hand going like this as the salmon were coming by, and then at the end of 10 minutes, they'd multiply that by 6 to get the escapement numbers. Mm. We'd throw a net out, not a gill net, but another net, and it would be so full of salmon we couldn't pull it in. 3 of us could not pull a net in. We'd have to dump it and let a bunch of salmon out before we could pull it in. It was
my grandpa talked about fishing like that in the Columbia River back in the day.
Back in the day,
yeah. I mean, even on our farm, it was called Salmon Creek that runs through the whole length of the farm, and it was full of salmon. Yeah. And good luck.
Amazing creatures.
Seeing a salmon now, they're not there.
So when you were up there in 1963, you joined the National Guard. That was right about the time when the draft started.
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
Were you nervous in 1962?
No, I wasn't nervous. I just didn't want to go in for full time. I tried to stay in research at the Bureau of Commercial Fisheries, but the boss said, no, you got to either draft it or join the National Guard.
So you're about 19 years old. Can you get it must have been a wild time because that was literally the last draft we've had in the country.
Yeah.
What was it like as a 19-year-old when you started hearing this word Vietnam and you started thinking about what is happening?
I didn't really hear about Vietnam until I was in basic training at Fort Ord.
So you joined the National Guard without respect to Vietnam? Or just kind of...
It was prior to Vietnam. We had advisors over there at the time. And so I went to Fort Ord for my basic training and then to Fort Sill for my advanced infantry training. But at any rate, our sergeant who ran our platoon at basic training, when he got to the end of basic training, and everybody who was drafted was going to get sent, but they were going to get sent to Germany or Korea. That was the choice they had. He said, no. He said, tell them you don't want to go there. You want to go to Vietnam. Saigon's like Paris. Oh, it's beautiful there. You want to go to
really?
Don't go to Germany or Korea. Go to Vietnam. That's the first time I'd ever heard of Vietnam.
That was your leadership.
And he had just gotten back from there as an advisor.
And it was probably true. The beaches of Vietnam are.
Yeah, there was
what I've heard, amazing.
No fighting in Saigon at the time. It was a beautiful city, and everybody was having a good time. And
wow. And then things changed.
So by 1965, Vietnam was going.
Nah, it was more 66.
66?
It had been going with the French for years, but I mean, it really didn't kick in till 66, 67. 67 was the big year that.
So tell me about your life back then as a teenager during Vietnam in the States. What was that like?
I think, I don't, it wasn't scary.
Was it kind of like
people were not happy about the draft. A lot of people were in college and they got deferred, and there were a lot of people that ended up leaving the country because they didn't want to go to Vietnam when it got started, and there was a lot of fear then. But by that time, I was back to work, and I was back at Pacific Oceanographic Research Laboratories doing helping 7 scientists with plate tectonic science.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Seafloor spreading.
That's exciting.
And so.
Well, you must have known the young man that passed away in the helicopter crash in training from here in Vietnam. Do you remember that? We had him on the podcast. Forgive me. I should remember the name. We just talked about him.
What?
Was it?
We had who on the podcast?
I can't remember who we were talking to, but it was a young man. Gosh, I'm sorry. I should remember this. Who was like 19, 20. Was in a training accident in Vietnam that passed away when he was 19 or 20 years old.
The only Vietnam pilot that I knew or got to know well was Bob Peterson, Tim's dad.
And, were you talking about Peebles?
No.
No?
Yeah, Bob Peterson and I became pretty good friends, and he told me a lot of stories about that stuff as a helicopter pilot.
Dean Moore.
But the one thing he said is, the moment I got out of there, I swore to myself I'd never climb into a helicopter again. The rest
Dean
of my
Moorhead
life.
was a Cobra pilot, I believe, too.
So there is quite a bit of trauma involved with these activities.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like today. There's trauma today.
Yeah.
Big trauma. I mean, how many people has the Forest Service lost down here, or the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest lost? They can't hire seasonal. I saw a gal on the street yesterday, and she said, I said, what's going on in the district? She said, I can't talk about it. You'll have to talk to Paul. I said, what about seasonal firefighters? She said, we can't hire seasonal firefighters. We don't have them.
Oh.
So we're sitting here in Fireland with no backup firefighters and stuff.
Oh, that was kind of a big employment
big seasonal employment thing,
young
huge
people.
Seasonal employment thing, Tara.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, that was a part of the summer influx crowd, were all the kids that came to work for the Forest Service.
Yeah.
So let's get back. You mentioned it briefly, but you have it in caps highlighted. A 90-day Pacific Ocean scientific cruise.
Yeah, well, at the Pacific Oceanographic Research Labs, as I say, we were studying seafloor spreading, or the tectonic plate system. And I was involved in a 90-day cruise on the Oceanographer, 305-foot research vessel, Seattle to Honolulu. And we were from Honolulu to the Aleutian Islands and Kodiak, down to Wrangell, and back to Seattle. And we were doing bathymetry of the Pacific Ocean bottom.
Sorry,
so we were actually doing, you've seen the National Geographic maps of the mountains and everything.
Yeah.
That's what we were doing. We were
like topography of the seafloor.
Yeah, we're doing topography, but it was bathymetry is what it was called. And
Never heard that word. You heard that word? Anyone?
We were towing a magnetometer and a gravitometer, so we were taking magnetic studies of the crust of the Earth.
Like MRI machine, but for the ground.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, so it was
Whoa.
a number of years until Nixon decided to rift me out of that program, and I had my passport in hand, my plane ticket in hand to fly to Valparaiso, Chile, and pick up the surveyor and come up the south coast, go to Easter Island, and he rift us. And so what I do? I went to England.
And so
8 weeks.
And RIFT is RIFED.
RIF, reduction in force.
Reduction in force.
That's
by the
what's
president.
going on today with DOGE. They're reducing in force thousands, not just
cutting the budget. Okay, so then in 1972, you traveled to England for 8 weeks to dive for ancient shipwrecks.
Yeah.
Might as well do that.
Yeah, why not? Well, the guy I went with, I was the PMC diving officer too. I had 40 divers that I was training how to work underwater for NOAA, for the ocean.
And let's back up. When did you learn that trick?
When did I do that?
Learn diving.
Geez, I learned diving back in the 60s.
So in high school?
No.
Or late after high school?
When I was at the Bureau of Commercial Fisheries.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned diving and did some diving research there. None of it really pleasant because we were diving in the middle of the winter in Fish Lake by Lake Wenatchee, and it was colder than hell.
Yeah.
You had 5 minutes in the water and you're out because your lips would freeze and fall out. But anyway,
Okay, so wait a minute. Like, this isn't the era of the internet,
right?
So how do you find out about this diving?
Started International Marine Diving and Explosive Services.
Well, that was
in 1969.
That's the company we started. But getting back to the English part, the guy that I traveled to England with grew up there. His mom was American and his father was a lawyer or a solicitor in England. So we flew into England and went to Hastings, and then down. They had a kind of like a vacation house down on
a country home.
Yeah, it was an old Coast Guard. So we stayed there. But at any rate, our first diving adventure is when we came across our ancient shipwreck. we got approached by some bottom trawling fishermen, and they had lost a new net on the bottom, and their divers were either sick or broken eardrum or whatever, and they had it marked with a float, right? So they wanted us to ask us if we would try to get their
net
bottom trawl back. We said, well, sure. So we we went out. And oh, by the way, we didn't ship our diving gear over. We got a hold of C.B. Gorman, which is the earliest diving manufacturer in the world. Hard hats and all that.
Oh, like those.
Yeah.
Your inspiration.
Yeah, and they are still in business with diving equipment. Anyway, I wrote a letter to them from International Marine Diving and asked them if we could rent some tanks, and they said no worries. And they actually delivered 6 air tanks to us at John's parents' house in Hastings before we even showed up. Tanks, regulators, the whole
suit and everything.
It was cool.
Yeah, what was that first ship like when you were down there? Do you ever figure out who it was or what it was?
They said it's only 65 feet deep, right? We're in the English Channel, and they had this float. And so John and I say, "Oh, that's cool. That's not very deep." And so we jump in, right? And we had an English fellow who was our tender, so he was going to keep track of our time and everything. So we went down, and the rope they had tied to this bottom trawl broke, and so we had nothing. And we hit 65 feet, and it was kind of interesting because after 50 feet, it kind of cleared up. It was dark, but it cleared up. And we just kept going down and down and down. We hit 120 feet and started diving along the bottom. And it was all mud. And then all of a sudden there's this hard scrabble or rock. And anytime you find that, it means that there's an obstruction. And sure enough, there it was, the ship, just like on a novel, the bowsprit sticking out of the mud, and their net was on it.
Oh. So you just found a ship.
Yeah, we found
randomly.
The ship. We took the net off, saved the net. When we came back and were through for the day, they said they'd bring us back out so we could dive on it. The next day, the fog came in and never lifted. We never got back out.
There you go.
Do you have any guesses
That's
what it was?
For you.
Huh?
Do you have any guesses what kind of ship it was or when it was?
Yeah. We looked it up. It was called the Wedding Vessel. So it sank in like 1850, 1860. It was a wooden sailing vessel. We would have loved to have explored it. We would have really loved it, but. We had warnings from the National Historic Society in England that we couldn't remove anything, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. But they gave us our reading cards. At any rate.
And they were aware that it was there?
No.
No?
No, there it was. That's where the net was stuck.
I mean, they didn't even know how deep the water was.
No, we had no, and of course John, he was a big guy, and he was kind of new to diving, not that new, but he was new to diving. He ran out of air, and he's going like this to me, and I'm a commercial diver. I could care less if you're out of air. Get it, go
bye.
Up. Anyway, I had to. We came up and we had to go back down for 20 minutes at 20 feet and 10 minutes at 10 feet.
Because you don't want to get the bends. Yeah.
And
you know what that is?
we didn't, fortunately.
Air bubbles in your blood, right?
Yeah.
If
so anyway, we're down at the cabin or the cottage and drinking beer at this pub, and this 1901 Thames sailing barge comes into the River Rother where we were, and it's across the river. So fascinating, and John's a sailor, so we drove around and asked if we could look at it, and they said yeah, and they took us aboard, and then we said, well, could we ride up the coast with you for a day?
Come on.
And they said no, can't do it. And then the weather came in and they couldn't leave. So we drove back around and said, hey, why don't you come over, we'll buy you a beer and play a little poker. So we took them back over to the William the Conqueror pub, and we played poker, but the bet was that if we won, we got to go on the trip.
And?
We ended up on that 1901 Thames sailing barge all the way up the coast of England into the River Thames through London to Hammersmith before we got off. It was an adventure, boy, I'll tell you what.
That's fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's amazing how travel can,
Well, you've always seemed, from the outside looking in and then reading this, you've always seemed like you're free spirit. You have roots here, and you've came back here, and you've done a lot of things. But you seem like you today have a lot of almost like captured youthful exuberance. As a human, you just seem like you're that kind of guy.
Yeah, I wanted to do the things I wanted to do,
and you still do.
No, wait a minute. Off camera, before we started, he said, "I've done everything."
Yeah, everything I've set out to do, I've done. I haven't gotten rich, but I've
life. Who says that?
Better make another list.
I mean, everything I've decided to do, I've done, and everything that's excited me, I've done.
I love that.
So you better start thinking again. There's more to do.
So I still have more to do.
You're getting lazy on me.
Were you like taught that at a young age, just to like be able to do that?
My dad being a forest ranger, I grew up in the mountains, number one. So I was always out. If I got the measles or I got the mumps or whatever, I didn't stay at home. I was with my dad. My mom was a devout Christian Scientist, so there was no doctors involved. I mean, I could go to the doctor, but I just go out in the woods with my dad, and with him. So I kind of got that. There wasn't a dirt road that he didn't want to drive on. He always exploring,
Well, what was your, now that you're on that, like Earl Stanford talked about, he's 90, so he's 7 years older than you. Otto Ross is 99, so he's 9 years older than Earl. Carol's 83, she's your age. What do you remember about this town, when you grew up here in Manson? What was it like for you
It was personally? A working town, okay? My first, and this is kind of interesting, like I said, I was 15, I wasn't happy to be moving.
Yeah, because you're
My
freshman,
dad,
right?
when he had come here, had rented an apartment above where the New Mexican restaurant, Marcella's there was an apartment up there, and he rented that and stayed there until we came. And so when we got here, I was staying in this little apartment looking over Buddy's Tavern. It was owned by that little old lady that owned it at the time. And she'd sit out in the grass.
Was it the Drift Inn?
The Drift Inn?
Yeah.
The Drift Inn, yeah.
You drift in, stagger out. That was the joke.
I was totally new to the town. I didn't know a soul. And I walked out the door to kind of do a little exploring, and there were a group of kids walking down the sidewalk on the other side. And they looked at me and said, "Hey, you're new. Do you swim?" I said, "Yeah, I swim." "Well, get your suit and come on. We're going down to the pool." And that was my first introduction to how friendly and how
cool.
Yeah,
so
welcoming they were.
Who were your buddies in high school?
Oh, it was Alan Chandler and Lane Roos and Jim McKenzie was one of my best friends. Ron King.
Jim McKenzie, remember that rooster tail boat he had?
Oh, God, yeah.
That was famous. He'd shoot a rooster tail
like a hell of a water skier.
100 feet behind him.
Yeah, he was a hell of a water skier, that guy.
Yeah. Kids nowadays don't. We talked about that earlier. Yeah. Like your dad would water ski off the beach and never get wet, and who was that? John Walker would jump off the dock.
He would jump off the dock.
And I water skied. I was slalom skiing. And then now the kids they're like, what is that? Like,
now it's like surfing slow while you can drink a beer.
Yeah.
Wait, didn't I hear you say that you can't get up on one ski, you have to get up on two?
Oh, I have ever been able to get up on one ski. It's like, who can do this? Yeah. And then you're too tired to even do anything after you've tried that a million times.
Yeah, it was interesting stuff.
I told my son, I go, "Hey, look at these pictures." I was cutting a wake, slalom skiing, and he's like, I think you went out with me. It was pictures, and then he went out with me because he didn't believe it in the pictures. So I was skiing, and he goes, I was thinking he'd be like, "That's cool, Dad. That's pretty studly. Like, that's athletic." He's like, "It's very nostalgic."
Dream on.
Very nostalgic, Dad. That's very nostalgic. Why would you do that? I'm like, you should try it. It's not as easy as it looks.
Oh, it is so not easy. There's nothing easy about it.
Rick Slosh and Jim Ernest and I would get up at like 5 a.m, and they were renting a house out on the South Shore, and we'd go out there and we'd ski. Rick would take the first thing, and we'd ski from there and go all the way around Wapto Point and up, and then he'd dive. And then Jim would come back in, and we'd stop in Manson for breakfast. This was like a morning ritual for all summer.
That's
and the lake was flat at that time. There was no.
That's how my whole childhood was here.
Yeah.
In the summer, my dad coming and waking me up. What teenage girl wants to get up at
5, 6 o'clock?
6.
Oh, you had to go early.
I get up. It was just, this was before all the rules. So it was just, I'm the only one in the boat. I'm pulling him. No flag. No, none of that stuff. But there was nobody out there.
There was nobody out there.
There was nobody out there. He was just going from the beach. We went down to Rocky Point. He'd give me the signal, zoom back, I'd cut in, he would ski right back to the beach, I'd put the boat back on, and go back to bed.
Yeah, we used to ski off Wapto Point, too. Going out at night, we'd put flashlights on the front of the skis.
Oh my gosh. Don't tell anyone this, but gosh, we used to go skiing, we used to go wakeboarding in the moonlight.
Yeah.
That's dangerous shit.
Oh, hell yeah.
That is so dangerous.
Especially with drift out there.
But like full moon, you could see perfectly, and nobody else was out there.
No.
Oh, it was so Let's do that again, Rich.
Okay.
Let's do it again.
Okay. We'll sneak out to Walker Point and take off from there.
So, were you friends with, like, back then? Do you remember? My dad tells stories, and again, I'm 7 years older than you, but they used to get in fights every week in Chelan. Like, a dance hall was there. They'd go to the dance hall.
Oh yeah, the old Oof Hall. Oh yeah.
Where was that? Do you remember where that was?
It was in the parking lot of Safeway right now. It was a big building, Oof Hall, and kids would come from everywhere.
We're talking from
Brewster, Pateras, up the Met Howell, Wenatchee. Everybody would come to dance, and they would have great bands, and it would be 300-400 kids. All having a good time on Friday and Saturday nights in Chelan. It was cool.
We
it was
need
high
more
school.
of that.
And
I bet. Good times.
One of my buddies was Jay Overbay, and his sister was 21, so she'd buy us a case of beer, and we put it in Jay's trunk, and we'd go out in the parking lot and drink our beer and go back in and dance and stuff. And they also had the roller skate rink there on the beach at the time. Remember the roller skating rink?
Oh, I've heard about it.
Yeah.
And the rodeo grounds was at the City Park.
At City Park.
Yeah.
Wait, where was the roller rink?
It was where Campbell's is now, up towards the Lakeview.
Oh, cool.
It was a huge roller rink then.
Oh, that was big.
It was big, and it was right on the water. It was, we'd go.
That's so fun.
I think roller skating was still big into the early '80s, late '70s, early '80s.
We had in Bellevue. We had skate parties.
And there was one in Wenatchee forever. I remember that's where we had to go.
But anyway, fights were pretty commonplace.
My dad said Lowell Pittman and those guys in his class, I think they were right about the same age, that he was little and they'd have bets that my dad could beat up their little guy. So the other big farm boys from other towns, and my dad was like 100 pounds as a senior and scrappy, and he'd like, but then we'd buy each other beer, but he goes, I always got beat up even if I won. I still got, I never had a fight.
But they knew they were in a fight, right?
Yeah, they were both. He won the fight sometimes. He goes, I still got beat up. And I never understood why my buddies would bet on me to fight every week. And I'm like, because you would.
I got threatened by an upper Manson classmate of mine. God, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he threatened me to leave his girlfriend alone.
Oh, boy.
Oh, this is it. Like ego,
you have a Lucky
testosterone, youth, and girls.
You're drinking 3 or 4 Lucky Lagers. What are you going to do?
Right.
Remember that beer? My dad loved Lucky Lagers. Had the little riddles on the tab, and the riddles underneath the tab.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember what we were drinking. Probably Rainier or something. But anyway, high school was fun. It was, what was that movie with... where the gal was driving around in the white Thunderbird, the movie I'm talking about. It took place just before the Vietnam War, and a lot of the kids that, it was based on fact, and a lot of the kids went to Vietnam and some died and everything. Great movie. Some of these older films, I'm trying to remember the name of it. But,
you'll think of it. It'll pop
the gal that was driving the Thunderbird was in Three's Company. She was the blonde gal. I think she...
Oh, Suzanne Summers?
Yeah, she was in that film, and she was driving around this white convertible Thunderbird, and all the guys in town were chasing her, trying to get her to talk to them. It was pretty good.
Oh, that just epitomizes high school in these small towns. Cruising.
It was all small towns.
No, cruising was huge.
Convertible Mustang around town and pick up boys every Memorial Weekend.
There was one scene where these boys snuck up behind the town cop who was parked in kind of the alley waiting for the cars to come by to go, and they tied a chain around the rear end and tied it to a telephone pole behind. So when they raced by, the cops took off and the whole rear end comes off the car. It was a great scene. Anyway.
It must have been, so, you think about the town now and all the changes, but, so I've been selling real estate like 3 decades, right? I've been here a long time. To me, it seems pretty similar in a lot of ways. I mean,
what I like to tell people, Russ, is that we still live in paradise, regardless of all the development. And I don't particularly care for all the development. As you know, I'm not a high density person, but it's a free country. People could come here and buy property, and I get a little mad at some of them because they think they own the place and they have no clue as to how this town was. I mean, I remember as a kid, when I was in high school, you could go up on Bear Mountain and look across, and you couldn't see a rooftop. Mm-hmm. You could not see a rooftop for the apple trees. I mean, those old common delicious trees were monstrous. Mm-hmm. We had a wine sap tree in our yard.
Pick like 3 bins.
Yeah.
On one tree.
125 boxes.
Yeah.
And I started working in the orchards when it was boxes. Not bins.
Yeah, that's 5 bins.
Yeah.
25 boxes in a bin.
And that basically paid my parents' property taxes.
Yeah, and they all made money. That's the crazy thing. The price per loose box is about the same as it was in the 70s now, except the costs are about 500, 600, 700% higher.
That was back in the day when you plant a tree and you made money. You know? Now, no one's making money in the orchard business. The orchard business is really sad.
Mm-hmm.
It is sad, you know, and it's a wild... I'd love to hear your opinion. It's so diverse and so complicated, but when you say density, on one hand, density is what allows affordability, right? Yeah. I mean, just fundamentally, if you have a 5-acre tract and you want to put a house every 5 acres, that's going to be very expensive because you have a lot of pipe in the ground, you have a lot of excavation in the ground, bigger roads.
Infrastructure is extremely
Infrastructure is, you know, incredibly expensive. So the attainable housing and acreage doesn't really mesh, right? If you're trying to keep prices down. On the other hand, so on one hand, we have a whole group of people that are priced out. They can't afford to live here. So we have this almost universal agreement, unless you're just a jerk, that everybody should be able to buy a home. And, you know, hopefully we can find a way to get that happen. On the other hand, you have the same sometimes overlap where it's like, I don't want to see another house built. So it's weird to me because you're like, wait a minute, if we never build another house, you did tell me you wanted affordable housing. You think nurses, cops, teachers should be able to buy a house here. On the other hand, I never want to see another house built. So doesn't that make the houses here worth a lot of money? Because there's a lot of people that live somewhere else that have found out what this place is like.
Well, the sad thing about Chelan, I'm talking about Chelan, not Manson, is that 67% of the homes sold in Chelan are second homes and are empty. They could be, you know, that's your affordable housing for the service workers and so forth, basically. So you have all these people buying second homes because they recognize Chelan as the new premier destination, right?
Sure.
Now here's an idea for you, and this is something that John Olson and I have been pushing with the school district. They're going to be pushing probably a $70 million bond issue in November to build a new elementary school behind the old community gym. And we're saying take the old elementary school and turn it into affordable housing. They did same building, same footprint, and everything in Cleveland did exactly that, and it's working really well.
Are you saying inside of it?
Inside, yeah.
Like apartments or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Turn it into affordable apartments. The old Mo building.
Yeah.
It's a building. It's there. Why not?
You know, they're doing that with like malls.
Mm-hmm.
Like something like the Wenatchee Valley Mall. I'm not saying that one, but malls across the country that have been kind of displaced with Amazon and other ways. So they're taking these, turning them into retirement centers, or you know, just basically taking every store and turning it into an apartment.
Yeah.
But I could see Mo. God, how many apartments could you put in that building? It's three stories. I mean, you know, it's a big building.
Yeah. The retrofit with the new construction laws.
And the same building in Cleveland they did that.
Wow.
So not a bad idea.
I haven't stopped by there yet, but I'm gonna drop by there.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue.
Yeah,
I mean, and you think about that. That's such a hot button for so many people. It's just interesting how many different layers of facts there are when you have to try to figure out how do we create something in today's world, in this state, with our government, city, local, county, state.
Yeah.
You know, on that same thread, though, I mean, there's more people on the planet than there were back when apples were making money. So do less people eat apples? Like, I don't understand why.
No, there's more apples for sale.
Yeah, and NAFTA was a problem.
The corporate orchards have basically flooded the market with apples. That's the problem. I mean, you know.
Marketing. It's a lot. It's a multifaceted, complex issue, right?
I love what
the color sorter killed it. I mean,
I love what Manson Growers is doing with their cider press. I don't know if you've been out there, but that's a great way to get rid of calls.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love it there.
Have you done the cider press?
No, I buy their cider, but I watch them do the press. But I mean, it's just me and Brody.
Yeah.
We're not. What are we gonna do with?
Well, you can go out there and buy a period of time and end up with 10.
You end up with like
10 gallons of cider for $75, and your kid has a wonderful learning experience.
Yeah, well,
we
do the Buckner Orchard, old school.
Don't
say that out loud.
I'm going up this fall. There's no way. I love that.
People up there.
Common delicious apples and red rum.
I love it. That's like old school. That's homesteady style, out on the prairie, and that's fun. We do that, and we end up with like 2 jugs, and we're good with that.
But those apples are so good. God, those old common delicious apples.
It's so fun.
Well, when the crispness of the apple and the sugar content and the color wasn't the most important thing, and the type was good.
It was a good apple.
It was a great apple. Yeah, it was an amazing, just an evolution like anything else, right? It's evolved, and there's new challenges. To your point, that there wasn't back then, and we're not going to get less popular. I mean, so to think about it is creative, and you know from behind the scenes, we're working on it. It's challenging, but we're working on it in 4 major locations in 3 counties in a city. So we've expanded our goals.
Sounds like a TV commercial.
Jim
I didn't ask for anything.
Jim tells me he's coming back in April. Jim's coming back in April.
Sorry.
Oh, by the way, here's a guy that you want to get in here.
Jim?
He'll talk your leg off, but if you want to talk about apple industry, get Mark Gores in here.
Sure, yeah. I love Mark. He's
Mark
a great guy.
loves to talk, and he's got the history. He's the guy.
He hung around a long time, too.
Yeah.
He had all that land above Kuntz's, if I remember right.
Yep. He sold that. He's retired now, but he's still managing the orchard, but he's retired. But he's the one orchardist in town that listened to Oval. Every time Oval told him, well, you need to change over to this apple or this. And that's why he never went to a bank. Never had to go to his bank. His dad kept buying property and building into a 40-acre orchard. And so they never had to go to the bank for money.
No, those guys that are still farming today that are non-corporate
have never gone to a bank.
Are unbelievably talented businessmen. I mean, not just the agricultural side. I don't think people understand how hard it has been for the last 30 years. It's crazy difficult.
I think Mark was lucky to have an accountant wife, too.
Mark probably doesn't.
This sounds like my neighbor. Right? My neighbor's a apple farmer, and his wife's an accountant. He's still
they
farming.
know. Like Russ says, they know how to.
They deserve a lot of credit, man. I mean, it's a complicated thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I mean, I think this last year is going to be difficult, and we'll see how it turns out. But I just want everybody to know that is still farming. You should take your hat off to him because there's nothing easy about it.
No.
Not to segue away from farming, but there's another segment of my life I never even put on that sheet.
Really?
Oh, come on. What is it?
Told you had an ambition problem.
Auto racing.
Auto racing.
Yeah, auto racing. I was
Come on.
I was a crew chief on a Corvette racing team in Seattle for 9 years, and we were the nine-year Northwest champion. Anyway, that was back in the day. That was back in the days, SCCA, Sports Car Council of America. Anyway, that was back in the day when everybody wasn't really famous yet. So I got to meet the likes of Carroll Shelby and became friends with Carroll Shelby. Matter of fact, he invited me to LA to buy a Cobra, and I said, "Sure, Carroll."
The Shelby engine.
You mean like
Carroll Shelby?
Like the Shelby.
Mustang Shelby.
I said, "Carroll, I work for the government. I can't afford a Cobra." It was only $7,600. Duh. Anyway, him, Dan Gurney, Jim Hall, all those guys that became very famous drivers and stuff. I got to know and.
So were you mechanic driven?
No, I was the crew chief. I was the one that made sure everything
organized everything,
made it to the track and what needed to be done and so forth. I started out kind of as a semi-mechanic. I'm not a mechanic.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
anyway,
I've done everything.
That was one of the things I fell in love with motor racing, and that was one of the things that I wanted to do.
Well, you said you saw the hydros as a kid when you came here, and so obviously there's a little bit of that.
I'm surprised you didn't jump in one of those and try that.
We were sponsored by Hilton Hyperlube, who also sponsored a unlimited hydroplane. And we had bought this engine from Precision Sealing that was supposed to be the Grand National Corvette engine for 63 that raced at the Bahamas, and we had no idea. We weren't told that the pistons had been changed over for drag racing. So we burnt holes on our first lap, on practice lap in 1964 U.S. Road Racing Championship. We burnt holes in 5 pistons.
Oh gosh.
And so we started calling around looking for pistons to put in the car so we could race on Sunday. And we finally, at 3 a.m, called our sponsor, Hal Hilton, and said, "Do you know where we can get 8 pistons for a 327 Corvette engine. He says, got 8 of them hanging on my wall in the garage. I'll bring them right over.
He needed to be able to call Carl and Lisa, parts people.
Well, he had at the time the fastest limited hydroplane in the world. It was a 7-liter or 5-liter, I think. And so he had them on his wall. I mean, so we made the race.
Oh. You know, your life is really cool because you're just like...
Oh, you haven't even got warmed up.
Like the free... What'd you say he was? You just had some term with... I don't know. It was well put, but... that you're just like kind of free spirit.
Youthful exuberance.
Yes, thank you. And you're just like doing these things. One thing begets another, and then you're just like, yeah, I'll do that. Sure, let's do that. I'll go to England. Hey, what about...
Well, let's talk about blowing things up.
Okay. We started.
So let me read this. Started international marine diving and explosive services.
A buddy of mine and I belonged to a club called Chaos. Cannon Hunters Association of Seattle.
What?
And,
Cannon Hunters?
Cannon Hunters Association of Seattle.
Do you love how it just says this is
common? Chaos Cannon Hunters.
Yeah, so it was quite the deal. We were worldwide. We put out booklets and everything. Anyway, there was a shipwreck up in Squim, up in that area, that we used to go and dive on all the time. And Bud said to me, he worked for the big foundry there on island, what's the island in Seattle, you know.
Yeah,
anyway.
The San Juans.
Yeah, the big steel foundry. He worked there, and I was with the government. He says, you know, we should start a diving company. And I said, well, let's do it, you know. So I talked to my bosses at Pacific Marine Environmental and told them what I was planning on doing, and they said, well, as long as you can do your work here, you can do that. So I'd actually get called up at work to go to Lockheed or Todd shipyards to do a dive in the middle of the day and then come back in at night and do my work there and everything. But at any rate, we ended up bringing on this guy by the name of Al Abbott, who was an explosives guy.
Oh, geez.
And his claim to fame was saving a ship in the Philippine Sea that had sunk. And it had sunk. I've got the brochure, but it had sunk with the bow and the cabin and all of the thing, and everything that they carried was in the stern. And so he and a crew of explosives experts went in and used shape charges and cut the ship in half and saved the
part that was
remaining. And then they just welded a new cargo end on the other end.
No way.
Yeah. So that was, he came to us, and he had also worked for the CIA during the Vietnam War, and he also developed 2-component explosives. Okay.
What does that mean?
2 components, put them together, and it becomes an explosive.
Like nitro and glycerin.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
By themselves, they're fine.
Not nitro. It was safe. I mean, it wasn't like regular dynamite where if you got it in your hands and stuff, you get the worst headache you ever had. Anyway, so we started doing demolition work, and we had another guy that was an explosives expert that did mainly rock blasting for sewer lines where you had rock and you had to get through. We did jobs in Ketchikan, all over the Northwest. But we also did demolition, and one of the jobs we did, which was kind of interesting, was take the counterweight off the old railroad bridge in Ballard. If you look up the canal from going across the Ballard Bridge, there's a railroad bridge. And anyway, we took the counterweight off, which weighed somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm thinking 800 tons. It was huge. It was monstrous. And so we went in and we put shape charges on it, and we built this big ramp of tires and dirt and stuff. So no one part of that counterweight would hit the ground at the same time, because we were like 75 feet to 100 feet from existing commercial buildings.
Can you imagine doing that now, what would happen?
Yeah.
Well,
how many permits you'd have?
They blew up the kingdom.
Oh, well,
so,
yeah, we had to go through. We had to go through all kinds of permits to do that. Anyway, I hid behind one area and Jerry hid behind another and pushed the button, and boom, off it went, but didn't feel anything.
Oh, God.
We said, oh, crap. It didn't go. It's still hanging there, and we've got a real problem. It went. It just hit that
thing you made.
Yeah, and there was no shake, rattle, and roll.
You did
there
perfect.
it was. And then we came in with a drill machine and drilled it and got rid of it. We did the
stank it?
We did the bridge tower going out of Issaquah towards Snoqualmie. There was just after you left Issaquah and got on the highway.
Yep.
There was big, and one of the criteria there was that no part of that bridge column could hit the highway.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
okay.
Yeah, but you're right there.
It's right.
It's right on the highway.
Yeah.
And that was DOT said no part of that can hit the highway. You can't damage our highway. And we shot it and did it and laid her over and didn't have a pebble on the highway.
So it seems like a lot of your explosives were around bridges and water.
Yeah. We took a monstrous propeller off aircraft carrier they were demolishing in Tacoma. We saved the United States Coast Guard millions of dollars when somebody turned the screws on the ship without getting the water flushing.
Ooh.
So it seized and broke all the bronze. The whole shaft was literally seized up, and they were going to have to burn through like 15, 16 inches of steel to get to it to burn the bronze out of there. And we said, no. Explosives have a way of changing things. Let us try this. And so we got permits from Seattle, and they had about a 6-inch gap between the propeller and the shaft coming out. And we wrapped that with primacord, and next morning they slid right out. We only charged them $10,000. It would have cost them millions.
Should have said $500,000.
We tried to get more. Russ didn't work.
What kind of insurance do you have to carry when you're in explosives?
So
it was all fascinating stuff.
Let's move to your explosives in Iran. What was that about?
This is
Iran.
So this is the CIA. Is there a connection between your guy?
Yeah. Well, no, there wasn't. He was kind of an interesting fellow. He had done this international thing with that ship, and so Russia built all of Iran's hydroelectric dams with no reservoirs. Like our dams have reservoirs for the silt to gather, and then they dredge it. Well, Russia didn't put any of those in. And you got all these hillsides in Iran with goats on them, right? Mm-hmm. So they're just burying the hillsides, and all this dirt gets in, all this silt, and it turns into concrete, basically. I mean, it was just hard. Yeah, hard. So we came up with the idea that we would blow it. We would.
Of course.
We would build these platforms and have shape charges sitting in there, and we would lower it to the bottom, and we'd blow it, and then we'd use airlifts and suck all that stuff out to you know.
Were there fish in there?
Huh?
Were there fish in
this
there?
Is in like
probably. It's just whatever.
Sediment.
But anyway.
You can't do that here.
Anyway, we actually got a contract to go to Iran and do that, but we had to have an Iranian partner. Okay, that's another CIA story for you. We had to have an Iranian partner, and it turned out we never got to go. Jerry got to go over and do a road job over there, but a blasting job over in Iran. But we never got to go over and actually do the Iran dam thing because our partner refused to share in the costs of doing it. All right, so. Anyway, one night the Iranians.
73.
Yeah, we were written up in the Seattle Business Journal and everything about this whole contract we had with Iran. That was when the Shah was still in place.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, one night our Iranian partners had come to Seattle to visit us, and we were sitting in the Olympic Hotel, and we're eating dinner, and Al Abbott kind of looks over at this other table. There's a guy sitting there eating dinner, and Al looks at him and says, "I know that guy. I worked with him in the CIA in Vietnam."
Oh my goodness. Small world.
Yeah. So we got all through a dinner and we ordered dessert. So this guy ordered dessert and we got up and left. As we're walking by, Al says, "Hey, Bill, nice to see you." Embarrassed the hell. Our phones were tapped. It was a wild time.
Whoa.
It was a wild time, yeah. CIA was keeping very close tabs of us.
Probably,
which leads me to the point of why I left my company.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask you. Left International Marine when partners tried selling
they made this decision that they could make money selling two-component explosives to an arms dealer. This arms dealer was a worldwide arms dealer, okay, and down in Arkansas. And so they were going to start selling two-component explosives to this guy to send a, whatever.
Yeah.
And I said,
probably a good move if the CIA had your phone.
I'm not liking this. Well, it turns out I left, and within a week, I had a telephone call from the ATF to come into their office downtown Seattle to have a little chat.
What do you know about this, Rich?
Yeah, what do you know about this?
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, I don't know anything about it except that those two guys were just kind of over the top. I'm out. I got out. So
smart move.
I continued doing some diving on the side with Jerry, the other guy that worked there, and I laid the sewer line in Lake Samish up in Bellingham. And
So that must have been in the early 80s?
Yeah.
And then you said here, that's when you got into that's when you got into photography, construction photography.
Well,
is that because you've always, since I've known you, obviously when you moved back here in 1988, for good it sounds like, but I've always known you with a video,
with a camera.
Well,
yeah.
Well,
but construction. I didn't know that.
There was a lot of sewer construction going on in Seattle. And
so
stormwater construction.
Oh, I see. On. So cameras.
No. And every contract that came out required pre-construction photography. So if you had say a 2-mile stretch that you're going to put in sewer line up this street, they would hire me to go in and take a photo every 50 feet and a photo of every driveway as pre-construction protection. And it was interesting because I would deliver 2 5x7s of each shot at $7-8 a piece. That only cost me a buck.
This is you developing it yourself, or
no,
you're taking it to some
it was
minute?
all color. I took it in, had it developed.
Okay.
I get charged like $1.50 a shot, and I'd charge them $7, $8, $9 a photo, all in a thing. So I was making lots of money. So, but it was interesting because what would happen was that this resident would come storming into the construction office and says, I want my driveway replaced. Look at the cracks in this driveway. And so they'd go to the photo book and they pull it out, and there are the cracks because they had photos of it.
Yes,
that happened a lot.
Yes.
Matter of fact, we were down in Aberdeen doing a job when a big contractor criteria was to tear the road out from center line to curb to put their sewer line in, and then replace it. The city of Aberdeen came back and said, "No, you cracked the other side. You got to do the whole road."
You're like,
So they hired me to do a video of this from a pickup, and they hired a couple high school kids with red spray paint. And the next road that they had to do, he went in and he painted every crack in the road that they didn't have to. And it looked like a spider web, and it shut the city of Aberdeen up.
Oh, this is so smart.
Yeah. Contractors aren't dumb.
Okay, so now are we segueing to you being here?
That's fascinating that was even a job.
Yeah.
And you came across that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. This is like Rich, right time, right place.
So you left Seattle and moved back to Manson in 1988. So you were born in what year? 42?
Yeah, in 1988. I was going through a divorce.
So you're about 40?
My mom was living up on the hill here and wasn't able to really take care of the place anymore. So I basically came over to help her get the house on the market.
You were about 45 when you moved back.
Yeah.
Feels like you've been here a long time since then.
I have been. I've been on a whole new career. I came back in 88 and was helping her get the house on the market, mowing the lawn and doing little stuff in the house, getting it ready to sell. And about 3 weeks after I got here, I'm going through a divorce, right? So 3 weeks after I get here, I walk out on the lawn and I look out over Wapato Point and the lake and I say, why do I want to leave here? Why would I want to leave here? I had no idea what I was going to do. I had not a clue. I worked construction for a couple of weeks, and then I heard about the annual hang gliding festival up on the Butte.
Oh yeah.
So I put together a portfolio. I did have my dark room, and I used my mom's laundry room, and I printed up a portfolio, and I drove down to the Wenatchee World, walked in and said, I'm looking for a job. I'm a photographer. Here's my portfolio. And the editor says, nice work, but we don't have any jobs right now. But if you see something that we're not covering that's really interesting, go ahead and cover it, and we'll see if we'll publish it. So
freelance.
Yeah. So Saturday I go up to the butte. I'm taking photos of the hang gliders, getting to know them and talking to them and everything. And then I went down to the library and I looked up hang gliding because I didn't have a clue, right? So I looked up hang gliding and went back on Sunday and shot some more. And then on Sunday night I developed all my photos. And on Monday morning I also wrote a story based on my research. At 6 o'clock Monday morning, I was at the Wenatchee World and gave them my stuff. On Tuesday, I had a full-page layout.
Yeah.
World, so the next week, they called me and said, "Can you cover the Chelan Rodeo for us?" And so I covered the Chelan Rodeo, and then I covered the Chelan Kids Rodeo, and then this gal that was working at the Mirror told Rick Gavin, "You got to hire that guy because he's nuts." I was going inside the arena when the bulls were coming out. I'd go inside, and of course the guys that were helping the bull riders out would tell me which bull I had to watch out for and stuff. So I was taking real good close-up photos of the bulls and the bucking horses and stuff. The bucking horses scared me more than the bulls did, but it was quite a time. And that's how I got started, and that's how I got hired at the Mirror. Because I wasn't sure I was going to have enough freelance work with the World to sustain me. So
and you worked there 15
I went to work for the Mirror to cover sports, basically.
15 years.
Yes, I think this is when Enner, Russ, and Des and Tara meet you.
Yeah. Yeah, Des and you graduated in 87, right?
I was 87, she was 88.
88, she was 88, so I didn't get to see her play volleyball. But Pat Beretta's daughter was followed in behind. Christy was
she was very good. Yeah.
Really huge at
Des
volleyball.
Was a basketballer. She played at Central that time.
Yeah.
You were probably
Des did. Yeah. She was an athlete, real good athlete, and of course her daughter was awesome.
This was like in the 80s too, or this was in like the early 90s.
Yeah, something like that.
This is an article he wrote about my. Must have been 90. Must have been late 90s. 98. I had hair then.
Yeah.
So. Did you?
Yeah, a little bit.
I have a rich picture of me from basketball.
I followed you through high school. You were a good athlete too.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
You know we have coming.
High school was fun, wasn't it?
You know who we have coming after you today.
What's that?
Do you know who we have coming as a guest after you?
Jerry.
Rick.
Who?
Rick Gavin.
Rick Gavin.
Good.
And Jim Oscarson.
When
and
is
Nancy,
he going to be here?
2.
Yeah.
Right after you.
Oh.
We're doing another.
Cool.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Rick for a long time. I know he lives in Wenatchee. I haven't seen Rick in a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to bring him up and we start talking to Mirror and how bad he treated me.
I want to raise. Rick, I'll bring it up. See if I get you $5.
Rick was a great boss. Yeah. Really he was an outstanding individual. Didn't like confrontation. Tammy Haig at a city council meeting when I covered stormed right up to the city council members and was screaming at them. It was probably one of the Chelan Basin Conservancy things or whatever, but I reported what she had done and how inappropriate it was, and she came in and she had Rick backed up to a wall and wanting him to fire my ass. Fire him. You got to fire him.
Well, small town's full of controversies.
And Rick looked at her and says, "He doesn't work for me. He's freelance."
Good idea. You don't report you don't make the news. You just report the news, Rick. That's
he subsequently hired me, but there was another instance where Jim Wall. I love it. That's another guy you ought to get.
I know we do. We need to.
Jim Wall came storming in. He was a PUD commissioner at the time, and he looked at me and he looked at Rick and he said, "You misquoted me." I said, "I did? God, I'm sorry. Show me." So we pulled the paper out and we're looking at the article, and there's the quote. Said John Wall. It embarrassed Jim so bad.
Not Jim. Well,
John.
It
wasn't Jim at all. It was John.
I never said that. You're right.
You didn't say it. John Wall, commissioner, said that. Anyway.
So you've been following, and then you went in from there. You graduated to when the internet was invented. Then you.
Well, I worked for the Mirror for 15 years, and then the new owners and I, and they obviously have failed, but
didn't click.
The new owners and I didn't get along from the get-go, and
GoLakeChelan.
So I left in 2002, 2003, and as I was walking out, Jerry was driving out of the Shell station, and he rolled his window down and says, "What's up?" And I said, "Well, I'm out of a job. You want me to go to work for GoLakeChelan?" He said, "Yeah, let's do it." And it was just basically just
Jerry
getting started. Yeah, basically just getting started.
We're talking to Jerry on the 25th.
Oh, good. Yeah. He's full of stories.
Oh,
so
man, yeah.
We got to working together, and I spent 12 years with Jerry at GoLakeChelan, and then he sold it to the quote-unquote idiot that he sold it to, and that went south. Well, that guy wanted to start a TV station in Chelan. The first thing that he did was he literally forgot what we were doing and how we got customers and advertisers and stuff, and he just ruined the business and ended up leaving town with his tail between his legs. Yeah.
And then when did you start your own?
Right after I left GoLakeChelan, and Jerry had sold the business to this guy. So this guy had, we would have restarted GoLakeChelan, but that guy had control of the brand. So, I'm amazed that Jerry's still with us, to be honest with you. So I decided. Well, the other thing that I did that day was I walked down to Barge Boy's office.
Courtney's?
No. Come
Barge
on,
Boys.
Richard. Boat company's son.
Rains.
Yeah. Anyway, he was doing his real estate thing. Remember?
Chris
he was doing real estate.
Sun Graphics.
Sun Graphics.
There you go. Yeah, he was building websites.
Yeah, he was building websites.
Okay.
So
we're all on the same page now.
Yeah.
We got it. We excavated.
Sun Graphic
became Savannah.
So I
I
walked in.
He
I
bet
walked
my first
into
page.
his office above the museum, and I said, "You got any? I'm out of a job. You got any work, writing or whatever?" And oh boy, do I have work for you. Well, he had these web pages that he was selling to real estate agents, but he didn't have all the blocks filled in. Like, what do you do with this? What do you do with that? What do you look for, and so forth. So he handed me this whole block of stuff to write about. So he paid me well. I did the job.
Chris was a visionary for sure. I mean, he did all of us. And you got to remember, when the internet was invented, we didn't know nobody really knew what it was.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, what the hell is a JPG?
Yeah. He's like so artistic and so talented.
I call him Barge Boy because he used to run the barge for his dad, Jack. And he finally quit.
I think search engine optimization, SEO work, and he did
SEO, all that good stuff.
All that stuff, yeah, it's crazy.
So I stayed busy.
Yeah.
I stayed busy, and then I started my own thing and started asking for advertisers and got them. And I'm not getting rich, but I'm maintaining. And
so let me go a little more emotional and personal for you. Of all these things you've covered, and all these sports events and rodeos and hang gliding and car racing and car shows and probably everything, dances, you name it, if it's happening in this town, are there any that just jump out at you like when you were doing it, like this is something special? Or is it hard to? I mean,
it's not hard at all. I mean, basically, your high school sports. Nothing really special except for state runs. I mean, when you go to state, like the volleyball team being a five-time state champion, that's you have to admit that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And Manson being a two-time state champion.
Yeah, I mean that was recently the first.
That's the last
title.
2 years.
Yeah.
That's very, very special. The 1994 hang gliding Women's World Hang Gliding Championship was special to cover. Met women, and there's some good stories that followed from that, but. The women's hang gliding was unbelievably special to me, and I got to meet all these women from all over the world.
Yeah, all over the world, and they were staying
Russia,
with host houses.
Poland, Germany, Japan, South America,
Isn't there
Australia.
A state record or world record that was distance record from?
I think Kerry Castle, who was a real good friend of mine, posted that up. as a woman, and she wanted me to come to Texas with her. I mean, I'm going to go for the world record distance down in Texas. Come on with me, Rich. We'll have fun. I said, no, Carrie.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already engaged. I had a partner. Anyway, I had a partner. I wouldn't have to follow
distance
to Texas. Anyway, so that was special. Then Joe Gludinski came to me the next year, and he stormed in, hair down to his butt.
Okay, this is the Joe I know.
He's Blue Skies.
He was the paraglider.
Yeah. Okay.
That's who I've been gone twice.
Okay,
Paragliding.
yeah, Joe.
With. Okay, Joe.
Fact, we had dinner the other night. Joe did. He always calls me when he comes to town.
Now, is he still married to the
Thai gal?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
So he's selling his food truck, and he's now doing mobile notary.
Oh my gosh,
stuff.
what?
Yeah, he's like me. He does a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in 1995, this guy comes storming into the Mirror. He's got hair down to his butt.
He's a great guy.
Long hair, and he's a hippie. And I mean,
he's a great guy.
And he looks at me and says, "Are you a reporter?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, you're going to do an article on me and the 1995 National Paragliding Championships on Chelan Butte." And I said, "Absolutely," and I did. And that was a pretty special time too. I got to meet a lot of interesting fellows. And the latest pretty special thing, lakeside surf. Man,
yeah, fun,
lakeside
right?
surf. Yeah, it is. It's a special amenity to this town. Mm-hmm. I love going up there. And,
it's so fun to watch those people.
Yeah. Now, are you still taking pictures everywhere you're going?
Yeah.
And doing all your stuff?
I'm looking to. I don't know what I'm doing. Who knows what?
You're still driving a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, boy, that.
You finally got rid of the green one.
My son has that. I gave that to my son. His wife wanted it bad, so she's got it. So yeah.
And Jim Reness comes to town. He stays with you. You guys get a reminisce.
Yeah. He said, I could get a motel room, and Raja would pay for it. And he said, but I live in Thailand. I have no one to talk to. I don't know the language. I have no one to no real close friend. You've been a close friend since '91 or whatever. So he comes and stays with me, and we talk all night long.
Yeah,
so it's hard to shut him up.
That's good.
We go.
He's a good man. Jim's
a great guy. He is. He's
yeah.
One of those few individuals that I have a lot of respect for.
I'm going to say that back to you. I think you're a great man, and
I
have
thank you.
a
I appreciate
ton of
that.
respect for you. And I have my earliest memories here that I cherish. You're in.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You're in.
Yeah, that was back in the days.
Yep.
Back in the days.
These kind of things, like when you were playing basketball and sports, and these articles that you've written over the years, about all of us that have kind of done things and grown up here. Whether
there was a time at the Mirror when I was working 80 hours a week because there was no other reporter. Mm-hmm. I would come to Manson for a basketball game, shoot the first half, drive into Chelan and catch the second half of a Chelan game. That was my life back then. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I'd go into the Mirror and develop it all so it was ready to be.
I've seen a lot of photographers in sports and in rodeo and business. And the one thing that I always knew when I saw you at any event was your sincere enthusiasm for your business.
I love it. Yeah.
Like you were like seriously into it, not just some guy that got...
Not just getting a check.
Got to take a picture of these damn kids in a small town.
I'm still doing it.
Well, I mean, I would say engaging because
I'm still doing it.
I don't think Rich is the only person taking pictures out
get
there
Hector.
in the
He's
world.
never in the videos. We got to get him on something.
But Rich is the most memorable.
Yeah, and he's. I think.
Well, that's because I've been around a long time. It's not that I'm anything special,
No, it's not true.
I think you take it serious.
That's not true. You become invested in
that's the right word.
Yeah, you become invested in the kids, invested in the activity, invested in the people. You become a part of the story.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I leave a legacy, right?
You have.
For sure.
You already, and I think you're just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I'm looking at you. I think you're 50.
He's still mountain biking.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, he does more than I do. So
all of us combined.
I feel like
Let's talk about
you're living
mountain
more
biking.
life.
You haven't touched on that. Tell me how you got into mountain biking and Bob Knaus and what you guys are doing.
Well, that was back before Chelan really started exploding. You remember the guy that had, what the heck was his name? He had a little bike shop down where that
Nature Gone Wild.
Yeah.
Mike Wixom.
He's over in Spokane.
Yeah, he's got a pizza place.
Yeah.
Pepe's.
I guess he's doing well.
He's had some health issues.
Yeah,
but speaking of him, he was a good friend and always has been. Love the guy. My son is adopted and was born in Coeur d'Alene, and the Kootenai Hospital is right next to his pizza shop.
Oh, really?
And we had to stay there for 7 to 10 days with Brody in the hospital, and so Mike fed us quite a bit. And
that's
it was
cool.
really fun to see him again.
So that's where you started?
Mike sold me my first mountain bike.
Nice.
Me too.
Yeah, he sold me my first mountain bike. And so there was a couple other people, and I started riding the Manson back loop and stuff. And then we'd go behind Anilon. There was a loop around Anilon Lake that we'd do. And eventually got up to Echo Valley. There was no Echo Ridge yet, just Echo Valley. And so we'd ride from Echo Valley way up on top and then come down back on the roads and back in. That was and the Butte. We'd do the half Butte where Roger wants to develop. And so I really loved it. I really loved mountain biking. And in 1998, well, you're talking about the internet getting started and what's that and all that. Well, in 1997, I was on this website called Mud Sluts, which was a mountain biking website. And we had all these people from all over.
Keep it PG-13, by the way.
All these people. All these people from all over.
Oh, it's podcast. We can say whatever.
Yeah.
All over Western U.S. and Canada. So we got to talking back and forth, and one guy suggested that we compete in the 24 Hours of Adrenaline up at Canmore, which was the 1988 site for the Winter Olympics. That's where this race was going to go on. And I said, I will cover it and write a story, but I'm not going to compete. And so none of us had met personally ever, right? So we kept going back and forth. And I've got all email messages back and forth. It was really crazy stuff. So we had this gal up in Vancouver was going to ride with us, and another guy up in Alaska was going to come down and ride with us. And eventually, they started dropping out. And for a team, you had to have 5 people. And they got down to 4, and they said, Rich, you've got to join,
man.
And we need you.
It's like Manson basketball.
And you're over 50, so you'll guarantee us a win. Right? You'll get us into the old guy thing. So I finally relented, and Joe and I drove up Canmore, and we met these guys for the first time. And it was great. There was a guy from Calgary. There was a guy from
that's kind of fun.
From Wyoming, and there was a gal from way up north in BC. He was a doctor, and so we raced, and I did.
Was your team called Mud Sluts?
Yeah, we raced as the Mud Sluts, and
I love that.
It was crazy. The 24 Hours of Adrenaline was crazy. It was like Woodstock. People were bringing in couches, and I mean, it was a 24-hour deal, and they had music going all night long. And they were they were boiling corn on the cob all night long, and I mean, it was crazy. And then other people that have their little campsites. There was a campsite close to us that ran Jimmy Buffett songs all night long, and it was just crazy. And so I did 3 laps, 12 miles a lap, one in the middle of the night, and the other guys did their 3 laps, and it was hard, but I was glad that I did it. And it was crazy.
These are not motorized bikes at that point.
These are mountain bikes, and it wasn't easy. There were a lot of hill climbing.
This is the electric bikes now. This
is So anyway, we ended up winning our division. So we got the yellow shirt and the medal and all that, and got to stand on the podium. What the heck? Yeah. My only real true athletic endeavor.
Well, then you just kept going.
I kept riding. Yeah.
And now you do it with you have a big constituents of people that are up there all the time.
Bob Knaus would be another one to interview.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
a great guy.
Bob
has done so much
with his
for this
trail
town.
building.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he gives back so much to the community.
Yeah.
All the single track trails up there that he's built at Echo Ridge at no cost.
How many hours has he been on a machine up there?
Oh, I don't know.
And he does that just.
But
he does that no
estate.
cost.
He's a real estate guy. He has cell phones, so if there's business, he's on the machine making trail, and call comes in. Yeah, I got photos of him working that. But yeah,
he's always told me his machine's too loud. Never answered my call.
Bob's an interesting guy. He's got a history
kidding.
you probably don't know either as a ski instructor.
I didn't know that. Excavation, I remember.
He comes from Montana, and he was a ski instructor.
Wow.
Real famous ski instructor. Yeah, so he's his son Cody. I don't know if you knew Cody or not, but his son traveled all around the world as a snowboarder racing.
Wow.
And there's a whole history there that's kind of outside the realm of Chelan and Manson. That's kind of interesting.
That's what this is all about, right? I mean, just sitting here talking to you, it's been, what, hour and a half?
Yeah.
And we could talk for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, yeah.
And we should, after this.
The other thing I'm amazed by is your memory. You have an amazing, you're going back 40, 50 years, and you're calling out people's names and where they're from.
Sharp guy. It's a sharp guy.
Sharp guy.
Sharp guy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're still 50.
Well, there's one other topic.
Must be the IPAs you're drinking.
There's one other topic I'd like to
Let's do it.
touch on.
We got all day. Rick can wait.
And that's wildfire.
Yeah.
Okay, I think wildfire is a topic that people in this town are really interested in.
It's hot. It's a hot button.
It's a real hot button.
Especially after last year.
Especially with the Pioneer Fire last year, which cost $100 million.
Yeah.
And a lot of questions about why
it doesn't get put out.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
But I got heavily involved in the Tyee fire in 1994.
I remember that. Yeah.
Forest Service hired me to go in and shoot firefighting activities, not the fire, but firefighting activities. So I had free run of the whole entire Tyee fire, and I got hooked up with a DNR chief, and we rode around and everything, and that was a fascinating experience to be right in the middle of it. You know, being with a DNR explosive team doing cut and trail with explosives up on Slide Ridge, and you know, hey, if the fire gets away, you got to run over the top of Slide Ridge.
Yeah, this is our exit strategy.
You know, but it was a fascinating experience, and what we've seen from the Tyee fire coming all the way to Chelan, and my mom getting evacuated along with a lot of other people, 137,000 acres, but then you start looking up the years. You look at 2014, and you look at what happened, 365 homes burnt to the ground up in Okanagan.
Fast.
Then you look at 2015 and what happened off the Butte, and the Buttes had fire after fire after fire, but the wind came up. They would have been able to put that fire out, I think, if helicopters had been able to fly right off the bat, but they couldn't because they'd flown too much on Wolverine fire. So they wouldn't let them fly. They wouldn't let them into the air until 9:30 in the morning, and they couldn't get it out. And by afternoon, when the wind shifted, we lost millions of dollars, $68 million just at the.
It was just so.
Actually, I think $80 million at Chelan Fresh. They were insured
all
for
the warehouses.
68. Anyway,
wow,
houses burnt down and stuff, and we think about Manson and evacuation. You know, you live up in an area that's probably pretty risky. I'm sure your home insurance.
I have a plan.
I'm sure. I bet you do. I'm sure your home insurance is not cheap. If you have
Don't talk about it, because I'm one of the ones that hasn't.
She has a fire hydrant right next to her house.
It hasn't been dropped, but
Allegedly.
you know, my purchase plan this year is a submersible pump for my pool.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You know how
Big
Cindy
sister.
Goodfellow saved her house over in the South Shore where all those other houses burnt, don't you?
No.
She got on her boat and came to Chelan and rented a pump and took it back on her boat and saved her house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a stay and I'm a stay and fight.
There's a guy down in California that saved his because he had a swimming pool and a well, and he'd been a firefighter, and he had all the proper equipment.
I'll put a generator on my well.
Half-inch hose,
What was that fire that was 25 Mile Creek? What year was that? That came down, burned the houses on the lake by Watson's. 2015, maybe.
20.
It burned those 11 houses or something.
Yeah, 2018.
Watson's Resort.
It was when. That was back when.
2018.
Bob was Haverine was really angry at the.
Yeah.
They pulled the fire trucks out of there and put them down there in front of the chief's house. It was pretty bad.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my dad. My dad was my daughter and son made me go find my dad because he wouldn't come down. He was living. He was running the bed and breakfast up by 25 Mile Creek for Holden Village.
Yeah.
So my mom came down and everybody was evacuated. Level 3, blah blah. No dad in sight. So my daughter's freaking out. She's a flamethrower, no pun intended. She goes, rent a boat. Stacy gives me a boat, Bikequist, nice enough to let me use a boat. Go up there, park at 25 Mile Creek, walk up to the bed and breakfast. My dad's on the roof with a hose. The fire's right there.
Yeah.
I go, you do know that it's evacuated. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's looking at me like, what do you think I'm doing?
Saving the house.
Saving the house. And I go, well, you know, that's a forest fire. And he goes, hey, turn around. He goes, you see that thing? What is that? I go, what are you looking at? He goes, it's a lake. Gets too close, I'll get in the lake.
Yeah.
I'm saving the house. My daughter's like, Grandpa. I go, hey, you talk to him because
that's how Chelan Ridge and all of that part of down the First Creek
like
in the
you just
state.
said.
But yeah, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are.
For sure.
Like what's
your
bottom line?
My concerns are that we're going to have not being able to hire any seasonal firefighters because of Doge. I think the fire. District 5 and District 7 will be able to because they're private. But the Forest Service is not allowed to hire any seasonals this year. That's where the firefighters come from, all because he's getting rid of them, you know. It's getting rid of everything. I mean, I don't know how many. I got to call Paul tomorrow. I want to know how many people have been let go at Chelan Ranger District and Aniak Ranger District because I know that I think around 4,000.
Have you talked to the state legislation guys at the state level?
Yeah. But I'm concerned about the fact that we're going to be without the kind of protection that we've had in the past.
Well, what's their backup plan, too?
Well, I don't know what the backup plan is because...
That's a good question.
My backup plan is to take care of myself.
Yeah. Well, that's about all you can do, Tara.
The best.
But I would anybody who is interested in what the old backup plans for fire were...
Yeah, back in the day before this even existed.
Go to Google and Google the 1970s fire that was narrated by, oh God, he did the TV Western.
I mean, I feel like everyone get your shovels.
Anyway,
you know? Like,
the 1970s fire up on Chelan Ridge.
We had a good discussion with Otto Ross about that.
Yeah, and it's a documentary that is fascinating, and that's back when all the farmers would drive up the road to the fire with their spray engines and fight the fires.
Otto said he had a Boy Scout troop up there that ended up fighting the fire.
Yeah, here you go, boys. Put her out.
But people that wonder about wildfire should watch that documentary because it was fascinating and we've had fire in this valley forever, you know, and so it's very concerning.
Lightning's been around a while.
Yeah.
Dumb people who start fires have been around a while too.
But just the education too, like if we're gonna have less resources, just be prepared. You know.
Yeah, think about the fire prevention when it comes to your house before, not after.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, some of the basic stuff that you can get from the fire department, from the ranger district. The Realtor Association has a lot of literature on what not to do.
Yeah.
Like don't put
the
brushes next to your house.
The fire-wise stuff.
Yeah, cedar shake's probably not a good idea for roofing.
Not at all.
Yeah. Don't put
Big in the 70s,
don't put bark right up next to your foundation.
Well, back when I was growing up here, Russ, all the orchardists that lived out on the edges had fire equipment stashed in case of fire. It was just stashed.
Well, the project you probably mountain biked at Union Valley is Chelan Vista Heights that we developed. A guy named John and Pete Walters, I represented them. They did 800 acres of 20-acre lots, and they built a fire break around it, and that's what saved all those houses.
Yeah.
That was part of the development plan.
It should be.
And that's how they used to backburn it, because you can get all the fire line with the equipment.
So that's how Holden was saved. They actually, the hotshot crews that worked in Holden during the Wolverine fire actually put a sprinkler system, huge sprinkler system, around Holden, the whole community,
Well, I mean, that's
and
just
turned
what
it
they did
on
in
and
Stehekin.
lowered the humidity, got the temperatures down into the 70s, and they literally saved Holden because it would have burnt to the ground.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's all
well, buddy, I'm telling you what, hour and 45 minutes. I could talk to you for 5 days.
I know. And listen, Mister, I'm nervous. Come on.
Thank you so much for
Thanks
joining
for
us.
getting in front of the camera.
It was fun.
Thank you.
It was
honestly,
fun.
thank you.
Appreciate
Keep taking
it.
those pictures, and
Don't stop.
You're just getting warmed up. I know you're gonna have a whole nother lifetime of
Please don't
adventures.
When's Rick due?
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right now.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
So what are you guys going to do for 15 minutes?
We're gonna talk to you.
We're just going
Go to the
to
bathroom.
go to the bathroom.